Helix is a console-based editor, much like Nvim or Kakune, and it also comes with modes like Nvim and Kakune, and it brings you a lot of features out of the box that in other text editors you would need plugins to have them. So it's a pretty coherent and, for what it does, polished experience. But if you want to do web or front-end development with it, there's still some steps to set it up. So let's have a look at the steps. First off, you need to install it. I'm using Homebrew, and I guess on Mac OS that's the best way to go about it. So yeah, it's installed already. So that's quick. And the next thing we need in order to do web development on it are language servers. So language servers run in the background and understand the language you are developing in, like JavaScript, TypeScript, CSS, HTML, and so on. But Helix doesn't come with these language servers by default. You need to install them yourself. And it also doesn't tell you how to install them. But if you do front-end development, the good news is pretty much all of these language servers run on Node. So you can just install them as global Node packages. So we can have a look at the ones I have installed, which is the language server for Angular. That's this one, for Astro, for Vue. This one is not related to language servers. This one we also don't need. NPM we have to have. There's a language server for StyleLint that does linting for CSS and SCSS. Svelte language server. And there's TypeScript, which also can give you information if you do JavaScript development. And if your project you're working on is pure JavaScript, makes sense to also install TypeScript globally. So the TypeScript language server has something to use. And this is also very important, although it's not apparent what it does. This gives you the core language servers out of VS Code, so the language server for HTML, CSS, Emmet is also part of it. And if you decide what language servers you need out of this list, you can just install them globally with npm. So I for install -g for globally, and let's say VS Code language servers extracted. And if you run that command, it will install the language servers globally, and then they can be used by Helix. And Helix knows about a lot of language servers out of the box. About some of them it doesn't know, but it's halfway easy to teach it. So we'll have a look at that in a moment. So once you have Helix installed and language servers installed, you're already in a pretty good place. So this is Helix, and yeah, with the default install and language servers, you should be pretty much good to go. But of course, you can configure it. You can just run :config open to open the configuration file. And let's have a look at what you can change in there to make it more suited to your needs. So first off, you probably want a theme that fits your taste. There's a lot of themes included. With :theme, you can have a look. So I'm using Node right now, but there's a long list of themes to try. So, but I'm sticking to that. That's my first setting, and probably one you want to set as well. Then we have a section editor, and in here I'm telling it that I want a ruler at 80 characters. That's the line you see to the right, so that I have a feeling for when lines get too long and I want to wrap them. This right here is when I'm changing to insert mode. So right now I'm in normal mode. As you can see in the bottom left corner, it says NOR, so kind of like a Nvim. If I hit I, I'm changing to insert mode, and my cursor shape changes to a line, like it would in Nvim. Otherwise it would stay with block. And yeah, for me it's helpful to have that extra feedback on what mode I'm in. Then I have some keys that are remapped in normal mode. I have this mapping, which also comes from Nvim, that I'm using the curly braces to jump paragraphs. So next and previous paragraph. And as you can see, while I'm jumping paragraphs, they get selected. That's the special thing about Helix, that movements also are selections. So if I move word-wise, you can see as I'm moving, I'm selecting things, and then if I have a selection, I can change them, delete them, and so on. So yeah, I like this feature from Nvim. I use it to navigate and select in text files, and I want that in Helix as well. So that's what I have right here. And this tells Helix, if I hit escape, I can cancel any selections I have or multiple cursors or anything. Just takes me back to default. Another thing from Nvim mapped over, if I had hit star, I'm doing a search for the thing that's currently under my cursor. And yeah, a document-wide search. So this right here has 2 occurrences. Yeah, that's this line, which is too long, longer than 80 characters. And if I'm in select mode, so what Nvim would call visual mode, I also want to use curly braces to move so that I can select multiple paragraphs. When I am in normal mode and I hit space, there's a decent number of options I have right here, and I'm adding to that list with space star, does a project-wide search for a word that is under my cursor. Space F opens a file picker in my current directory, which is not the default in Helix. The default is with space F opening a file picker in the project root. So that would be the Git root in Git projects. And if I'm in a monorepo, that's not always a good solution because it's just too many files. My solution for mono repos is switching into the part I'm in usually with my editor, and then I want to search in there by default. So I'm remapping this. And this right here, space and bigger than, this opens a file picker in the buffer directory, so the directory of the file more or less I'm currently viewing. And this is kind of a poor man's file explorer, because Helix right now doesn't have anything like netrw, so a file explorer. But with this, at least I can see all sibling files of the current file, which is useful in some projects. Like for example, the way I usually do React projects is that each component has its own directory with a TypeScript file or TSX file, and some styling next to it, which is then imported as a CSS module. And with this, I can quickly change from one to the other because I can look at all sibling files. And that's it. That's the whole configuration in Helix. And yeah, it's a lot of stuff carried over from Nvim and still only 22 lines. But what's not in this config is how Helix handles language services, which by default it knows about a lot of language servers. But if you want to add something it doesn't understand right now, you need to change from the config toml to a sibling file, the languages toml, which is in the same directory, in your home directory .config/helix/languages.toml. And here you can do two things. You can add new language servers, like I'm doing right here in line 1, 2, 3. So this adds Rubocop, which is a linter formatter for Ruby. And it tells it, I'm adding a new language server, and it's called Rubocop. So this string right here can be anything, but yeah, it's something I need to remember because I will refer to it later on. To start it, I'm running this command, and it has these arguments. So I'm using bundle exec, which is a Ruby thing to run something in the same virtual environment or a gem that comes with the project. And I'm running Rubocop with -- as LSP, so in LSP mode. So now Helix understands about Rubocop. And if you're lucky, in a while, something like this will get merged to Helix itself, so we can remove this, but right now we need it. And same thing for Stylant. Right now, Helix doesn't know about Stylant, so I'm telling it that this LSP exists. This is something we installed earlier with npm, and this needs the arguments standard.io. And also, this has some configuration. So we have .config, so toml, and I'm telling it I want to autofix on format and on save. And another one, I want emmet, and I'm telling it how to run the emmet language server. So if you want to know how to set up a language server, a good place to look is in the Nvim Lspconfig plugin, which essentially does this just for Nvim. And if you look in the GitHub of that project, you can see how they set up the language servers and just copy stuff. So that's all the non-standard language servers I set up. And when we move to the second part of this file, which sets up settings for different languages. So right here I have HTML. Helix has default settings for HTML, which are sensible, but I want to extend them. So I'm touching them here. I'm telling it I want the VS Code HTML language server for HTML files, which is something Helix sets up by default. If you want to know about all of the different things that are available by default in Helix, you can have a look at the Helix GitHub repo, and there's a very big languages toml in there, which sets up default language servers, so you know what they're named, which is arbitrary. But I don't only want this one, I also want emmet. Emmet gives me the ability to write shorthands for HTML structures and then expand them into code, which is handy. And furthermore, when I save, I want to use prettier as a formatter and tell it this is HTML that you're working with. And yeah, that's HTML. And for Ruby, also tell it I want to auto format when I'm saving. And I want not only solar graph, which is a default that's set up, I also want Rubocop, the thing I just set up earlier in this file. Solar graph is not an NPM package, that's a gem, which is kind of a thing that happens in a lot of languages. If they're not strictly front-end, then probably you use their package system to set up the language server. So here we have TypeScript. Here we use TypeScript language server, of course. And also ESLint, that's another thing that comes with VS Code language server bundle. So I want to lint with ESLint as well. And yeah, want to format with prettier. JavaScript is the same thing. And TSX, again, more or less the same thing. Still, this needs extra entries, otherwise Helix or the language servers get confused about what file type it is and how it should handle it. And also TSX, I'm adding emmet because this is something that includes HTML-like things. JSX is exactly the same as TSX. JSON I want to format with prettier. CSS I want to lint with stylint and get the IntelliSense from the VS Code CSS language server. Auto format, yes. And as CSS, I want to lint with stylint, and for SCSS I have gotten some strange errors from the VS Code CSS language servers because it doesn't understand some things that are SCSS specific. So I'm telling it I only want completion. So this completes CSS parameters, so something like font size, and then it gives me a list of possible units that I can use for a font size, but I don't want it to complain about things being wrong. And there's another trick in here. As a formatter, I'm doing two things. So I'm running bash, and within bash, I'm running first stylint with autofix. And what comes out of stylint, I'm piping it to prettier. So first stylint, then prettier with a CSS parser, and then it goes back into Helix. And last off view, we also want to format with prettier. And that's it. So yeah, this is a few things, but it's going to be less in the future when Helix knows about more servers by default and probably gets a bit smarter about setting this up. And that's all the config there is to Helix, at least for me, to use it daily for web development. So is Helix ready for daily usage? Depends on what you want from it. It works very stable. I think it crashed on me once, and it does what it does very well, but there's definitely some things missing that you're probably used to if you're coming from VS Code or if you're coming from Nvim, such as a file browser or tree-based file browser that's not in there, or if you want to work with text objects as you know them in Nvim, so change inside tag. That's something that's not existing right now in Helix. That's something I'm missing. The good news is for pretty much all of the features you're missing, or a lot of them, there are pull requests already within Helix, but it's probably going to take a while for them to mature and land. So yeah, right now it's early days with Helix. It's already a very good experience because it's very coherent. You don't need to worry about, does this file tree support the theme I'm using? Of course it does, because it's all part of one package. But yeah, there's stuff missing. And it uses a different syntax, different language to select text. You first have your selection, so E for end, and then you have your command change. So the other way around compared to NeoVim. I feel like that change makes it easier to learn the language, because you get immediate feedback about the selection you're doing. Whereas in NeoVim, you're doing the whole thing, and at the end you notice that you did something wrong. Here you have a selection, okay, I'm selecting within this range, and yeah, that's the thing I want, and then you do the change. But yeah, it's a bit better, but it's not a huge change. And it's also not a huge change to switch over to it. You will lose, of course, some muscle memory if you're coming from NeoVim, but it's pretty quick to learn it, because all of the base movements, up, down, are more or less the same. What's different is moving to beginning and end. So you have GG is the same, but it's GE to go to the end, and also to go to the end of a line is GL or GH. So to go to the beginning. So that's different, but yeah, you get used to it, and you have this which key style menu all of the time, which gives you context, so it's a lot easier to learn. So yeah, that's Helix and how to set it up as a front-end developer. I hope you have fun trying out this editor. Bye.